Have you ever found yourself wondering, why does my life feel stuck despite all my efforts? Or maybe you've asked, why do I keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again? Think about it. How often do we blame others, the world, or even luck for the way our lives turn out, while ignoring the role we ourselves play in shaping our reality? Imagine this. You're driving a car, and suddenly it starts making strange noises. Do you keep driving, hoping the problem will fix itself? Or do you stop, inspect the issue, and repair it before it leads to a breakdown? Life works the same way. We must pause, reflect, and fix ourselves before it's too late. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, where we explore life's deeper truths and offer insights that can help transform your life. Before we dive in, a quick message. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% of viewers actually subscribe. If you're finding this content valuable, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us reach more people who need this wisdom, and it motivates us to keep bringing you meaningful content. Buddhism teaches us a profound truth. Change begins within. It's not about changing the world outside, but transforming our inner self. Yet, in our busy daily lives, we often forget this. We rush through days filled with distractions, avoiding the hard work of self-reflection and self-improvement. But here's the truth. Without self-awareness and effort, our lives can spiral into suffering, frustration, and regret. In this video, we'll explore why fixing yourself isn't just important, it's urgent. We'll delve into timeless Buddhist teachings that shine a light on our struggles and guide us toward clarity and peace. Buddhism isn't about rules or rigid beliefs. It's a practice, a way of living that starts with understanding yourself. Think of the moments in your life when things didn't go as planned. Was it really external circumstances, or was it your reaction to them that made things worse? Buddhism invites us to stop pointing fingers and start looking inward. Self-transformation isn't easy, but it's the most powerful tool to create lasting happiness. This isn't about being perfect. It's about progress, taking one step at a time to align your actions, thoughts, and emotions with your true self. So, stay with us as we uncover the lessons that can help you fix yourself and build a life of purpose and fulfillment. This is just the beginning. Let's take the first step together, understanding the root of suffering. Suffering. It's something that we all experience at some point in our lives. Whether it's physical pain, emotional distress, or mental exhaustion, it's something we can't escape. But have you ever wondered why it exists? Why does it feel like we can never fully escape the grip of suffering? In this part, we are going to explore the root of suffering, particularly through the lens of Buddhism, and learn why understanding it can help us free ourselves from its control. The Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, taught that suffering is an inevitable part of life. He called this the first noble truth: life is suffering. Now, this doesn't mean life is only full of sadness and pain. What it means is that all of us will, at some point, face difficulties, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the failure of a dream, or even just the natural process of aging. Suffering is built into the fabric of our existence. But here's the most important part. Understanding why we suffer and where that suffering comes from is the key to overcoming it. According to Buddhism, suffering arises because we are attached to things we desire, things we fear, and things we believe we cannot live without. These attachments create expectations that life will always go according to our plans, and when it doesn't, we experience suffering. Think about a time in your life when something didn't go the way you wanted. Maybe you didn't get the job you wanted, or a relationship didn't work out. How did it feel? Most of us would say it was painful, perhaps even devastating. Why? Because we were attached to the idea of how things should be. We had an expectation, and when reality didn't match it, the pain arose. This is the nature of attachment. It ties us to outcomes, making us vulnerable to suffering when those outcomes don't unfold the way we want them to. The Buddha's insight goes even deeper. He said that suffering doesn't only come from attachment to things or people, but also from our attachment to our own ideas about who we are. This is a tricky one. We all have an image of ourselves, our identity. We think of ourselves as successful, kind, strong, or perhaps as someone who can never fail. But what happens when we don't live up to these self-created images? The pain can be unbearable. We feel lost, confused, or unworthy. This is because our identity, our sense of self, is tied to expectations. What if I told you that this attachment to our identity is one of the greatest sources of suffering? This is where Buddhism offers an important lesson, the concept of anatta, or no self. In simple terms, it means that there is no permanent, unchanging self. Our identity is not a fixed entity. It is fluid, ever-changing, and dependent on countless factors. When we cling to a rigid idea of who we are, we create an illusion of stability, and when that illusion is threatened, we suffer. Now, this doesn't mean that we should give up our sense of self altogether. Instead, it's about understanding that our sense of self is not fixed or permanent. When we let go of the need to define ourselves in rigid terms, we become freer. We are not bound by past mistakes or future expectations. We can live more fully in the present moment without being weighed down by the heavy burden of who we think we should be. This brings us to another important Buddhist concept, dukkha, often translated as suffering, dissatisfaction, or unease. In Buddhism, dukkha is not just the obvious pain we feel during difficult times, but also the subtle dissatisfaction we experience even when things seem okay. It's that nagging feeling that something is missing, or that life could be better. This subtle dissatisfaction comes from the same root, attachment. Even when things are going well, our minds are often busy comparing them to past experiences or worrying about future ones. This creates a constant sense of unrest. So, how do we begin to reduce this suffering? The first step is recognizing the nature of our attachments. By becoming more aware of what we are attached to, we can start to let go of those things that are holding us back. But letting go doesn't mean abandoning everything we care about. It means releasing our grasp on things with an open mind and heart, accepting that life is unpredictable. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is the idea of impermanence, or anicca. This teaches us that everything in life is temporary, whether it's our feelings, our possessions, or even our relationships. Nothing stays the same forever. The moment we start to grasp onto something, whether it's a happy moment, a material possession, or even our own health, we set ourselves up for disappointment when that thing changes or disappears. Let's take a simple example. Think about your favorite possession. Maybe it's a book, a piece of jewelry, or something that holds sentimental value. You love it, and it brings you comfort. But one day, it breaks, gets lost, or you no longer need it. When that happens, how do you feel? Often, we feel upset, as if a part of us has been taken away. But if we understand the truth of impermanence, we can accept that everything in life comes and goes. Nothing is permanent, and that's okay. Buddhism teaches us that we should not try to hold on to things too tightly because they are not permanent. This includes not just physical objects, but also our experiences and emotions. Our emotions, whether joy or sadness, are also fleeting. They rise and fall, and we don't need to attach to them or let them define us. This doesn't mean we should live in a state of indifference or detachment from the world. Quite the opposite. It means that we should live fully in each moment, appreciating what we have, but without clinging to it. We can love our friends and family, pursue our passions, and enjoy life's pleasures, but we do so without the fear of losing them. By accepting the impermanence of everything, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. The Buddha didn't just leave us with the knowledge of suffering and attachment. He also provided a path to overcome it. That path is what we will explore in the coming parts of this video. But for now, understand this. The root of suffering lies in our attachments, whether it's to objects, people, or even our own identity. When we learn to let go of these attachments, we begin to free ourselves from suffering's grip. So, take a moment today to reflect. What are you holding on to too tightly? What in your life are you afraid to let go of? Understanding the root of your suffering is the first step in letting go of it. Once you start to release your attachments, you'll find a greater sense of peace and freedom, and life will no longer feel like a constant struggle against the current. Awareness, the key to inner change. Awareness is the doorway to transformation. Without it, we are like a ship lost at sea, drifting aimlessly without direction. Think about it. How often do we go through our days on autopilot? We wake up, go to work, handle our responsibilities, eat, sleep, and repeat, without truly being present for any of it. We're caught in a cycle of reactions, distracted by our thoughts, emotions, and the constant noise around us. But real change, real growth, begins with awareness. Awareness in Buddhism is often referred to as mindfulness, the ability to be present, fully aware of what is happening in the moment, without judgment. It's about seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. This is where true self-discovery begins. When you're aware, you start to see your thoughts, your emotions, your desires, and your habits. You understand why you react the way you do, why you make certain choices, and why you feel the way you feel. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. You can finally see what's been hidden. Many of us are trapped in a constant loop of negative thoughts, influenced by the past or worried about the future. But awareness allows us to break that loop. It brings us into the present, where we can find peace and clarity. Have you ever been in a moment of stress or confusion, and suddenly, just by pausing and breathing, you felt a wave of calm? That's the power of awareness. It centers you. It helps you step back and observe the situation without being consumed by it. In Buddhism, mindfulness isn't just about meditation. It's a way of living. It's about paying attention to each moment, no matter how small. The way you breathe, the way you eat, the way you speak, the way you walk. It all becomes an opportunity to practice awareness. And the more you practice, the more you begin to notice things you never saw before. You become more aware of your reactions, your emotions, your patterns. And when you become aware, you can choose to act differently. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you're in a difficult conversation with someone. Maybe they say something that triggers you. Without awareness, you might react automatically, getting angry or defensive, or saying something you'll regret later. But with awareness, you can catch yourself in that moment. You can notice the feeling of anger rising, and instead of letting it control you, you can choose how to respond. You might take a deep breath, listen more carefully, or speak more calmly. That moment of awareness gives you the power to change your response and, in turn, change the outcome of the situation. Awareness is not about denying your feelings or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It's about accepting the present moment as it is, without resistance. You're not trying to change or fix anything immediately. You're simply observing and acknowledging it. This can be a difficult practice because we are so accustomed to reacting, judging, and resisting. But over time, mindfulness helps you detach from your automatic responses and see things with more clarity. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the idea of the Four Noble Truths, which explains the nature of suffering. The first truth is that suffering is a part of life. We experience physical pain, emotional pain, loss, disappointment, and all kinds of other difficulties. The second truth is that suffering arises from attachment and craving. We hold on to things, people, possessions, ideas, and when they change or disappear, we suffer. The third truth is that suffering can end, and the fourth truth shows the path to end it, the Noble Eightfold Path. Awareness is one of the key aspects of this path. When we become aware, we begin to see how our attachments are causing us suffering. Maybe we're attached to a certain idea of success, or to how people should treat us, or to the way things should be. When reality doesn't match our expectations, we suffer. But with awareness, we start to notice these attachments and can begin to loosen our grip. We learn to live with an open hand, accepting that change is inevitable and that everything is temporary. This is one of the most liberating truths in Buddhism. Awareness is also a way of seeing our relationships with others. Think about how many times we project our own insecurities, judgments, or fears onto the people around us. We often see others not as they truly are, but as we imagine them to be, based on our past experiences, our beliefs, and our biases. But with awareness, we can start to see people more clearly. We can listen more deeply, respond with kindness, and avoid reacting out of anger or frustration. Relationships improve when we practice mindfulness, because we become more present and more understanding. But how do we cultivate awareness? It starts with being honest with ourselves. We have to be willing to look at our lives and our patterns without turning away. We have to face our fears, our flaws, and our weaknesses. And we have to do this with compassion, not judgment. Buddhism teaches that we are all flawed, and that's okay. The goal is not to be perfect, but to understand ourselves better so that we can live more consciously and harmoniously. One of the most powerful tools for developing awareness is meditation. Meditation isn't just about sitting in silence for hours. It's about training the mind to focus, to be still, and to observe without attachment. When you meditate, you're essentially practicing awareness. You start by focusing on your breath, noticing when your mind wanders, and gently bringing it back to the present moment. Over time, this practice helps you develop a deeper sense of awareness that you can carry with you throughout your day. But meditation isn't the only way to practice mindfulness. You can bring awareness to everything you do. When you eat, pay attention to the taste, the texture, the colors, and the sensations. When you walk, notice the movement of your body and the ground beneath your feet. When you talk to someone, truly listen to them without planning your next response. Every moment is an opportunity to practice being present. And as you do, you begin to shift the way you experience life. The beauty of awareness is that it's always available to you. It doesn't require special conditions or circumstances. It's not something you have to go out and find. It's already within you, waiting to be discovered. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And over time, you'll notice a profound change in the way you respond to the world. You'll become less reactive, less controlled by your emotions, and more in tune with your true self. This is the power of awareness. It's the first step on the path to inner change. When you can see clearly, you can choose more wisely. When you're present, you can experience life more fully. And when you're aware of your thoughts and actions, you can begin to break free from the patterns that keep you stuck. So, take a moment today to be aware. Pause and breathe. Look around you, listen to the sounds, and notice how you're feeling. Just be present with whatever is happening, without trying to change it. And remember, this is just the beginning. The more you practice, the deeper your awareness will become, and the more you will understand yourself and the world around you. Letting go of attachments. In our daily lives, we constantly hold on to things. It might be material possessions, relationships, or even ideas about ourselves. We think that these things define us, or that without them, we would be lost. But the truth is, clinging to anything, even the most beloved aspects of our lives, causes suffering. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is the root of all suffering. It's a hard truth, but a necessary one. Every time we become attached to something, we create expectations. We want things to stay the same. We want things to go a certain way. But life is never predictable. People change, situations change, and even we change. When we hold on too tightly, we end up hurting ourselves. Consider this. Imagine you're holding a cup of hot tea. It's warm, comforting, and satisfying. But if you hold on to that cup too tightly for too long, the heat will burn your hands. The same thing happens when we hold on to people, possessions, or even thoughts that no longer serve us. We get burned by our own attachment. The Buddhist teachings on attachment are not about renouncing everything, nor are they about living a life of detachment in the sense of not caring for anything. Rather, it's about understanding the impermanent nature of life and our role in it. Everything we experience, good or bad, is temporary. Our lives, our relationships, and our achievements, none of them last forever. This isn't something to mourn, but something to accept. Imagine a leaf floating down a stream. It drifts with the flow of the water, moving freely, without resistance. It doesn't cling to the branch from which it fell, nor does it fear the currents that will carry it away. The leaf simply lets go, trusting the journey. It's free. This is how we should approach life. If we are too attached to the past, we are not living in the present. If we are too attached to the future, we lose sight of what's happening now. By clinging to things that are temporary, we deny ourselves the peace of living fully in the moment. Letting go is not about giving up, it's about freeing ourselves. It's about releasing the need for control and accepting the flow of life as it comes. This doesn't mean we stop caring. Rather, we care in a way that is flexible and open. We embrace the people, opportunities, and experiences that come our way, but we don't bind our happiness to them. We learn to love without possession, to live without attachment. One of the biggest attachments we have is to our own identity. We build stories about who we are based on our past, our successes, and our failures. These stories shape how we see ourselves and how we engage with the world. But the problem is, we are not static. We are constantly evolving, learning, and growing. The person you were yesterday is not the person you are today. So why cling to an old story? Why hold on to labels or judgments that limit your potential? By letting go of these attachments, we create the space to become who we truly are, not who we think we should be based on past experiences. It's freeing to release these self-imposed limits and embrace the unknown. One of the most powerful aspects of letting go is forgiveness. Holding on to grudges, anger, or resentment only weighs us down. It's like carrying a heavy backpack on a long journey. It slows us down and tires us out. But when we forgive, we are releasing that weight. We are not doing it for the other person. We are doing it for ourselves. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of letting go. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of bitterness and opening ourselves to peace. But letting go doesn't just apply to emotional attachments. It also applies to material possessions. Many of us accumulate things over the years: clothes, gadgets, furniture, and so on. We think that these possessions will bring us happiness, or we become attached to them because they give us a sense of security. But in the end, these things are just temporary. They don't bring lasting happiness. Buddhism teaches that attachment to material things only fuels our desire for more. It's a never-ending cycle. The more we have, the more we want. But if we step back and examine this desire, we can see that it never truly satisfies us. It's like eating a sweet dessert. At first, it's delicious, but soon we want more, and it doesn't bring us lasting contentment. The joy of possession fades, and we are left wanting more. The key to breaking this cycle is simplicity. When we let go of unnecessary possessions, we free ourselves from the burden of caring for them. We don't need to be attached to things to feel whole. Instead, we can focus on the things that truly matter: our relationships, our health, our growth, and our inner peace. Letting go of attachment also means embracing change. Change is inevitable. It's part of the natural flow of life. But we often resist change because it makes us feel insecure. We fear losing what we have, whether it's a job, a relationship, or a way of life. But change is the one constant in the universe. Nothing stays the same forever, and that's okay. When we stop resisting change and start accepting it, we unlock a deep sense of peace. We stop fighting against life and begin to flow with it. Instead of holding on to what's no longer serving us, we allow ourselves to grow and evolve with life's changes. Letting go of attachment makes us more adaptable and resilient. We don't need to hold on to old habits, beliefs, or behaviors that no longer serve us. If something is causing us pain or keeping us stuck, it's time to let go. This might be difficult, especially if we've been holding on to something for a long time, but it's necessary for our growth. Letting go is not about rejecting what we have, but about creating space for something better to come into our lives. In the end, letting go is an act of trust. It's about trusting that life will unfold as it should, without our need to control every aspect. When we let go, we make room for new experiences, new lessons, and new joys to enter our lives. We trust that everything happens for a reason, and that even the difficult moments are part of our growth. So, how do we start letting go? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to what you are attached to. Notice the things, people, and ideas that you cling to out of fear, insecurity, or desire. Once you become aware of these attachments, you can begin to question them. Do they really serve your highest good? Are they helping you grow, or are they holding you back? Letting go is a gradual process. It's not something that happens overnight, and it doesn't mean you have to give up everything at once. It's about taking small steps to release what no longer serves you. Whether it's an old belief, a past hurt, or a material possession, start by letting go of one thing at a time. As you begin to let go, you'll notice a shift within yourself. You'll feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. You'll begin to understand that true happiness comes not from holding on to what we have, but from the freedom to let go and embrace what comes next. This is the essence of Buddhism: to live without attachment, to be present in the moment, and to find peace in the flow of life. Let go, and watch how life opens up in beautiful, unexpected ways. Cultivating compassion for yourself and others. Let me ask you a simple question. When was the last time you truly showed compassion to yourself? We live in a world where we are constantly striving to be better, to achieve more, and to meet the expectations of others. But in this pursuit, we often forget the most important thing of all, to be kind to ourselves. Compassion is one of the core teachings in Buddhism, and yet, it is often misunderstood. It is easy to show compassion to others, especially when they are going through tough times. But how often do we extend that same compassion to ourselves when we are struggling or failing? We tend to be our own harshest critics, judging ourselves for every mistake, every failure, and every perceived flaw. This constant self-criticism creates a barrier between us and our own well-being, making it harder for us to grow, heal, and move forward in life. Buddhism teaches us that compassion begins with ourselves. Before we can show true compassion to others, we must first learn to offer it to ourselves. Imagine for a moment that your friend is going through a difficult time. You would not scold them or belittle them. Instead, you would listen, comfort, and offer understanding. Why then do we treat ourselves with less kindness? In Buddhism, there is a concept known as self-compassion. It means being gentle with ourselves, especially in moments of failure or suffering. Just like a parent would comfort their child when they fall, we must learn to comfort ourselves. Self-compassion is not about indulging in laziness or avoiding responsibility, but about recognizing that we are human, and we all have moments of weakness and imperfection. Think about it. Have you ever been too hard on yourself after making a mistake? Perhaps you blamed yourself harshly for not being perfect. But what if, instead of self-judgment, you responded with understanding? What if you said to yourself, "It's okay. I'm learning. I'm growing"? This shift in perspective is powerful because it helps you move through difficult times with grace, rather than being stuck in negative emotions. Buddhism encourages us to practice metta, or loving kindness, not only for others, but for ourselves. When we cultivate this attitude of love and kindness within, we begin to radiate it outward to the world. It becomes easier to show compassion to others when we first understand what it feels like to be kind to ourselves. We often think that being kind to ourselves means being selfish or indulgent, but this is a misunderstanding. True self-compassion is not about avoiding responsibility or letting ourselves off the hook. It's about recognizing our own suffering, acknowledging it without judgment, and offering ourselves the same kindness we would offer to a loved one. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we are better equipped to face the challenges of life. We are less likely to be overwhelmed by stress, anxiety, and fear. Instead, we develop a sense of inner peace and resilience that allows us to handle life's difficulties with greater ease. Now, let's talk about how we can cultivate compassion for others. Buddhism teaches that all beings, just like us, want to be happy and free from suffering. Everyone we meet is going through their own struggles, even if we don't see them. When we approach others with compassion, we begin to see them as they truly are, not as objects for our judgment or criticism, but as fellow human beings worthy of love and understanding. Imagine walking through your day with the thought that everyone you meet is carrying their own burdens. How would your interactions change if you looked at others with kindness instead of judgment? Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of feeling angry, you think, "I don't know what they're going through today. Maybe they're having a tough time." This simple shift in perspective can turn frustration into empathy. Buddhism teaches that compassion is not just about helping others when they are in obvious need. It's about developing a deep sense of care and concern for all beings, regardless of their circumstances. This doesn't mean we have to give away all our time or resources, but it does mean approaching others with an open heart, ready to offer help or support when it's needed. One of the most powerful aspects of compassion is that it helps to dissolve the boundaries between us and them. When we see others as being just like us, struggling with their own fears, desires, and challenges, we can let go of feelings of separation and embrace our shared humanity. We are all interconnected, and compassion allows us to remember this truth. It's also important to understand that compassion is not about rescuing others. It's about offering support, empathy, and love, while respecting their ability to find their own path. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing we can do for someone is simply to listen, to hold space for them, and to allow them to express their emotions without judgment. Through daily practice, we can cultivate compassion as a natural part of who we are. It's not something that happens overnight, but rather a quality that deepens over time as we consciously choose to approach ourselves and others with understanding and kindness. So, how can you begin this practice of compassion in your own life? Start small. Begin by offering kindness to yourself. Every time you make a mistake or face a setback, pause and say to yourself, "I am worthy of love, even in this moment." Gradually, expand this compassion to others. When you interact with people, try to see them through the lens of empathy. You can also practice meditation to develop compassion. One powerful meditation is the loving kindness meditation, where you silently repeat phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease" for yourself, and then extend those wishes to others. This simple practice can open your heart and transform the way you relate to yourself and the world. As you cultivate compassion, remember that it's not about being perfect. It's about being present, being patient with yourself, and showing up with an open heart. Each day is an opportunity to practice compassion, and each day is a step closer to living a life of greater peace, joy, and connection. In the end, compassion is the key to healing not just ourselves, but the world. When we learn to love ourselves with all our flaws and mistakes, we open the door to loving others in the same way. And through this practice, we can transform our lives and, in turn, the world around us. Let us embrace compassion as the path to healing, both within ourselves and in our relationships with others. By starting with kindness, we can build a foundation for a better, more peaceful life. The power of mindfulness. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and disconnected. We move from task to task, often on autopilot, our minds racing from one thought to the next. But in the teachings of Buddhism, there's a powerful tool for transforming this chaotic, fragmented way of living: mindfulness. So, what exactly is mindfulness? It's the practice of being fully present in each moment, without judgment, without distraction. It's the simple act of paying attention. Sounds easy, right? But in reality, most of us spend our lives either lost in thoughts about the past or worrying about the future. We rarely experience life as it is happening right now. Imagine for a moment, you're sitting at a park, watching the trees sway in the breeze. But instead of enjoying the moment, your mind is busy replaying the conversation you had earlier or stressing about what you have to do later. You're physically there, but your mind is somewhere else. This is the way most of us live. We're not truly here. We're somewhere else entirely. Mindfulness is about breaking that cycle. It teaches us to anchor ourselves in the present, to experience life as it unfolds, without the noise of distractions. It's about being aware of what's going on around us, but also within us, our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. It's the practice of seeing things clearly, as they truly are, without the filter of our judgments or preconceived notions. But why is mindfulness so important? In Buddhism, mindfulness is considered one of the most powerful practices for achieving enlightenment. It's not just about being aware of what's going on outside. It's about seeing ourselves clearly, without the layers of emotion, bias, and assumption that usually cloud our judgment. Mindfulness allows us to become more aware of the patterns in our thoughts and behaviors. It shows us how our mind tends to jump from one thing to the next, constantly chasing after desires, fears, and worries. It helps us realize that most of the things we're chasing, whether it's success, approval, or material possessions, don't actually bring lasting happiness. When we're mindful, we can begin to step back and observe these patterns without getting caught up in them. We can see how our thoughts create our feelings, and how our feelings influence our actions. For example, let's say you're stuck in traffic, and you begin to feel frustrated and angry. If you're not mindful, you might react impulsively, yelling at other drivers or letting your anger take over. But if you practice mindfulness, you can pause, take a deep breath, and simply observe what's happening inside you. You notice the frustration rising, but you don't have to act on it. You can just be with it without letting it control you. This kind of awareness gives you the power to make better choices. Instead of reacting to life with anger, fear, or greed, you can respond with clarity, patience, and compassion. You begin to see life as it truly is, not as you think it should be. This shift in perspective is liberating. It allows you to let go of unnecessary stress and find peace in the present moment. One of the key teachings in Buddhism is that suffering arises when we cling to things, when we resist change, or when we allow our minds to wander and chase after things that don't bring true happiness. Mindfulness helps us to break this cycle of suffering by teaching us to let go of attachment and to simply be present with whatever is happening right now. This doesn't mean we stop striving or working towards our goals. It doesn't mean we give up on improving ourselves or our lives. But mindfulness helps us to approach life with a sense of balance, awareness, and acceptance. We can still pursue our dreams and ambitions, but without letting them control us or define our happiness. Mindfulness also teaches us to be more compassionate, both to ourselves and to others. When we are mindful, we become more aware of the suffering around us. We start to see the pain and struggles of others, and we naturally feel a desire to help, to ease their suffering. But this compassion isn't just about helping others, it's also about being kind to ourselves. We often treat others with more understanding and patience than we treat ourselves. Mindfulness helps us to change that, to offer ourselves the same compassion we extend to others. But how do we cultivate mindfulness in our everyday lives? It's not something that happens overnight, and it's not always easy. It requires practice, patience, and dedication. The good news is, mindfulness can be practiced anywhere, anytime. You don't need to be in a quiet meditation retreat or a serene temple to practice mindfulness. You can practice it while washing dishes, while walking, while talking to someone, or even while eating your lunch. Start by simply bringing your attention to whatever task you're doing. If you're washing dishes, focus on the sensation of the water and soap on your hands, the sound of the dishes clinking, the movement of your body as you scrub. If you're walking, feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice the breeze on your skin. Listen to the sounds around you. When your mind begins to wander, and it will, gently bring it back to the present moment. This act of returning your focus to the present moment is the essence of mindfulness. Another powerful way to cultivate mindfulness is through meditation. In Buddhist practice, meditation is a way to train the mind to be more focused, more aware, and more present. You don't need to meditate for hours. Just a few minutes a day can make a huge difference. Find a quiet space, sit comfortably, and bring your attention to your breath. Notice the sensation of the air entering and leaving your body. When thoughts arise, simply observe them without judgment and gently return your attention to your breath. This practice helps to quiet the mind and bring us back to the present moment. Over time, as you cultivate mindfulness, you will notice a shift in the way you experience life. You will become more aware of your thoughts, your emotions, and the world around you. You will begin to see things clearly, without the distortions of judgment or attachment. And as a result, you will find that you are more at peace, more compassionate, and more connected to the world and people around you. The power of mindfulness is immense. It has the ability to transform the way we live, the way we think, and the way we relate to others. It can bring us closer to the truth of who we are and help us navigate life's challenges with grace and wisdom. So, take a moment right now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and simply be present with whatever is happening in this moment. Notice how you feel, what thoughts are arising, and what sensations are present in your body. This is the beginning of mindfulness. With practice, you'll find that you are more grounded, more aware, and more at peace. And as you continue on this journey of mindfulness, you will discover that the present moment, right here and right now, is where true happiness and contentment reside. Karma and personal responsibility. Life often feels like a series of events beyond our control. We blame our circumstances, our upbringing, or even fate when things don't go as planned. We ask ourselves, why does this always happen to me? Or, why do bad things keep coming my way? But what if I told you that much of what we face today has been shaped by our own actions in the past? This is where the law of karma comes into play. In simple terms, karma is the law of cause and effect. It's the idea that everything you do, say, or think has consequences. This isn't just a belief or a spiritual concept. It's a way of understanding life's flow. When we do something, it doesn't disappear. It ripples outward, creating results, good or bad, that will return to us in time. Whether we're aware of it or not, our actions create patterns in our lives, and those patterns eventually come back to us. Think of karma like planting seeds. If you plant good seeds, like kindness, patience, and honesty, they will grow into beautiful, fruitful plants. But if you plant bad seeds, like anger, deceit, and hatred, those will eventually grow into thorny bushes, full of pain and trouble. The seeds you plant today shape the future you experience tomorrow. But let's pause for a moment and address something important. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the idea of karma. After all, it seems like a huge responsibility to manage every action, word, and thought we have, right? But here's the good news. Karma doesn't mean you're stuck with your past actions forever. You have the power to change, to begin planting new seeds, even today. This is where personal responsibility comes in. Personal responsibility means understanding that we are the architects of our lives. While we can't control everything, we have complete control over how we respond to situations. When something goes wrong, it's natural to look for someone to blame, our parents, society, or even fate. But real transformation happens when we take responsibility for our own actions and reactions. Let's look at an example. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your first reaction might be anger. You might want to honk, shout, or give them a dirty look. But in that moment, you have a choice. You can choose to hold on to your anger, let it fester, and perhaps even ruin your entire day. Or you can choose to let it go, to not let someone else's actions dictate your emotions. This small choice might seem insignificant, but it's a powerful example of how karma works. Every choice you make, big or small, has the potential to create peace or conflict in your life. When you choose peace, you plant a seed that will bear fruit in the form of calmness and inner harmony. But what about when life feels unfair? What about the times when you're the victim of someone else's bad actions? It's important to recognize that while you can't control what others do, you can control how you react. Even if someone wrongs you, you have the power to choose forgiveness, to choose peace over resentment. This doesn't mean you accept bad behavior, but it means you free yourself from the weight of anger and bitterness. Karma teaches us that we're never truly victims. Yes, life may present challenges, and yes, people may hurt us. But in every situation, we have a choice about how we respond. The way we react to others' actions, the way we handle life's difficulties, all of these are part of the karma we're creating for ourselves. And in doing so, we begin to break the cycle of suffering. Now, you might be thinking, but what if I've made so many mistakes in the past? What if my karma is bad? It's natural to feel that way. But remember, karma isn't about punishment. It's about growth. It's about learning from our past and using that knowledge to create a better future. Just because we've made mistakes doesn't mean we're doomed to repeat them forever. The key is to recognize where we went wrong, learn from it, and make a conscious effort to change our behavior. Every action you take today is an opportunity to heal the past and build a better future. If you've hurt someone, you can apologize and make amends. If you've been selfish or unkind, you can choose to act with generosity and compassion from this moment on. The past doesn't have to define you. What matters is what you choose to do right now. One of the most powerful teachings of karma is that it's never too late to change. Even if you've made mistakes in the past, you can always plant new seeds. Each thought, each word, each action is an opportunity for change. And with each positive change you make, you start to create a new pattern, one that leads to peace, happiness, and fulfillment. But how do we break free from the cycles of negative karma? The first step is awareness. We have to become aware of our thoughts and actions. If we're not conscious of what we're doing, we can easily repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Meditation and mindfulness practices are powerful tools that help us observe our thoughts and reactions without judgment. They help us catch ourselves in the moment and choose a different path before we act. Another key to changing our karma is to practice forgiveness, forgiving ourselves and others. Often, we hold on to anger or guilt, thinking that by doing so, we're punishing the person who hurt us. But the truth is, we're only hurting ourselves. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the chains of resentment and allow ourselves to move forward. This is one of the most liberating actions you can take in your life. Lastly, it's important to understand that karma is not just about big, dramatic actions. It's also about the small, everyday choices. The way we speak to others, the way we treat ourselves, the way we spend our time. These are all part of the karma we're creating. And when we start to make small changes, those changes begin to accumulate, creating a powerful force for good in our lives. Remember, karma isn't a punishment. It's a tool for growth, for learning, and for creating a life of peace and happiness. You are not defined by your past actions. You are defined by what you do right now. So take responsibility for your life, take responsibility for your actions, and know that every moment is an opportunity to create better karma and a brighter future. If we want to change our lives, we have to start with ourselves. We can't wait for the world to change first. By taking personal responsibility for our actions and choosing to plant good seeds, we create the life we want to live. So ask yourself today, what seeds are you planting? What kind of future do you want to create? The law of karma is powerful, but it's not something to fear. It's a path to freedom. When we take responsibility for our actions, we stop being victims of circumstance and become active creators of our lives. We take control of our own destinies. And with every positive action, every moment of mindfulness, we build a future filled with peace, love, and fulfillment. The role of meditation and self-realization. When we talk about fixing ourselves, many of us immediately think about what we can do in the physical world. But true transformation doesn't start with what we do on the outside. It begins with what happens inside our mind. The tool that allows us to explore, calm, and change our minds is meditation. Meditation is not just sitting in silence for a few minutes each day. It is a powerful tool for self-realization. It is the practice that helps us see things as they truly are, not how we wish or fear them to be. Through meditation, we can gain insight into the patterns of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior. We start to recognize where we are trapped and where we have the freedom to change. But let's take a step back. What exactly is meditation? You might have heard of it in various forms: Zen meditation, mindfulness, or Vipassana. While there are many techniques, the core of meditation remains the same: learning to focus the mind and becoming aware of our thoughts and feelings without being overwhelmed by them. To understand why meditation is so important, think of your mind as a lake. Normally, it's filled with waves, thoughts, emotions, worries, desires, all of them stirring the water and making everything unclear. Meditation is like sitting beside this lake, waiting for the water to calm down. When the water settles, you can see everything clearly at the bottom. This is what happens when we meditate. Our minds become less cluttered, and we can see the true nature of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Meditation allows us to cultivate mindfulness, the ability to be fully present in the moment. When we are mindful, we stop reacting to life automatically. Instead of getting caught up in anger when someone frustrates us, or feeling sad because of something that happened, mindfulness allows us to pause, take a breath, and choose how we respond. We no longer have to be slaves to our emotions or thoughts. This brings us to one of the fundamental lessons of Buddhism. The mind shapes our reality. When we meditate, we begin to see the mental patterns that control our lives. These patterns might have been formed long ago, perhaps as a result of past experiences, traumas, or beliefs we inherited from others. We may not even realize how these patterns are running our lives. Meditation is the key that helps us unlock the door to understanding these patterns, breaking free from them, and creating new, healthier ways of thinking. Buddhism teaches us that our minds are like a garden. If we don't tend to them, they can become overrun with weeds, negative thoughts, worries, doubts, fears. But just like a gardener who carefully cultivates the soil, we too can tend to our minds. Meditation is like the watering can, providing the care needed to nurture positive, peaceful thoughts while uprooting the weeds of negativity. Through consistent practice, meditation allows us to develop a deeper awareness of ourselves and the world around us. We begin to recognize that our thoughts are not who we are. We are the observer of our thoughts. This simple yet profound realization is the foundation of self-realization. Meditation also teaches us to be non-judgmental. In our day-to-day lives, we are constantly judging ourselves and others. We judge ourselves for our mistakes, our appearance, our abilities, and our actions. We judge others based on their behavior, their appearance, and their opinions. This constant judgment only adds to our suffering. Meditation helps us step out of this cycle of judgment. We learn to observe our thoughts and feelings without labeling them as good or bad. One of the most transformative aspects of meditation is that it gives us the ability to be present with our emotions without being controlled by them. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when we experience strong emotions, fear, anger, sadness. These emotions can take over, making us feel helpless. But when we meditate, we learn to sit with these emotions without letting them control us. We observe them with compassion and understanding, and over time, we begin to find peace even in the midst of difficult emotions. Another powerful effect of meditation is that it helps us develop compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. Many of us are our own worst critics. We hold on to guilt, shame, and regret, punishing ourselves for past mistakes. Meditation helps us let go of this self-criticism. It teaches us to approach ourselves with kindness, understanding, and patience, just as we would treat a friend who is going through a difficult time. Through regular meditation practice, we also begin to cultivate gratitude. When we slow down and reflect on our lives, we start to see the things we often take for granted. Our health, our loved ones, the simple joys of life. Gratitude helps shift our focus from what we don't have to what we do have, bringing us more peace and contentment. Meditation doesn't just help us with internal transformation. It also impacts how we interact with the world. As we begin to clear away the mental clutter, we become more open and receptive to life's experiences. We no longer approach life with the constant need for control or the fear of the unknown. Instead, we begin to trust the process of life, knowing that everything we experience is an opportunity for growth. You might be wondering, how do I get started? The beauty of meditation is that you don't need anything special to begin. You don't need fancy equipment or a perfect environment. All you need is a few minutes each day and a willingness to simply sit, breathe, and be with yourself. Start by finding a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. You don't need to try to control your thoughts, just notice them as they come and go. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back to your breath. It's normal for the mind to wander. The key is not to judge yourself for it. Over time, you'll find that you can stay more focused and your thoughts become less overwhelming. You can start with just a few minutes each day. Gradually, as you get more comfortable, you can extend your meditation time. The more you practice, the more benefits you'll experience. You'll start to feel calmer, more centered, and more at peace with yourself. Remember, meditation is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong practice that requires patience and dedication. The benefits won't come overnight, but with consistent effort, you will see profound changes in your life. As you meditate, you'll begin to feel more connected to your true self, and that connection will guide you on the path to inner peace and self-realization. In the end, meditation is not just a practice, it's a way of life. It teaches us to be present, to be aware, and to be compassionate. And when we practice these qualities, we unlock the wisdom within ourselves to live a life that is truly free from suffering. Through meditation, we become the architects of our own minds, and in doing so, we become the architects of our own happiness. Impermanence, embracing change. Life is always changing. You wake up, and the world feels different than it did yesterday. The seasons shift, people come and go, and even the things we hold on to tightly, our jobs, relationships, health, are all subject to change. Have you ever thought about this? How everything around us, and even within us, is in constant motion, always evolving. In Buddhism, this is known as impermanence, or anicca in the Pali language. It is one of the central teachings, and understanding it can radically change the way we live. At first glance, impermanence might seem like something to fear. After all, if everything is temporary, doesn't that make life uncertain and unstable? But here's where the beauty of this teaching comes in. Understanding impermanence doesn't mean we should be afraid of change. Instead, it encourages us to embrace it with open arms. Everything in life, good or bad, is temporary. This means that when things are tough, we know they won't last forever. And when things are going well, we are reminded to appreciate them before they fade away. Imagine you are standing by the shore, watching the waves crash against the beach. Each wave rises up and eventually falls back into the sea. You can't stop the waves, and you can't predict where they will land. But that doesn't make you fearful of the ocean. You learn to accept the waves, knowing that they are a part of the natural flow. Life, too, is like this ocean, full of waves of change. If we try to fight the waves, we will only tire ourselves out. But if we learn to ride them, we move more easily with the flow of life. One of the most profound lessons in Buddhism is that everything is impermanent. The Buddha taught that our lives, our bodies, our relationships, and even our thoughts are not permanent. They rise, they change, and eventually they pass away. This is the nature of existence. But instead of this truth causing anxiety or sadness, it should bring relief. Why? Because it means that suffering, too, is temporary. Take a moment to think about your own life. Can you remember times when things were difficult and you thought you would never get through it? Maybe it was a tough job, a broken heart, or a period of uncertainty. Now, look back. Aren't you glad that those struggles eventually passed? They didn't last forever. The pain faded, and you learned, grew, and became stronger. Impermanence teaches us that life is always moving forward, and this includes our struggles. If we are patient and mindful, we can see that all things pass. But here's the tricky part. We tend to resist change, especially when it's uncomfortable. We cling to things, our successes, our security, our loved ones, because we fear losing them. The desire to hold on to what we have creates a sense of attachment, and attachment leads to suffering. Imagine holding onto a rope so tightly that your hands start to bleed. That's what attachment does to us. It holds us back from fully experiencing life. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring about the people or things we love. It simply means we accept that nothing in this world can be owned forever. When we let go of our attachment to things, we are free. We free ourselves from the fear of loss and the pain of change. We can love more fully, live more freely, and enjoy the present moment without worrying about what will happen next. The Buddha said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought." If we spend our days thinking about how things should never change, or how we need to hold on to what we have, we will miss out on the richness of life. Instead, we should open our minds and hearts to the impermanence of all things. This allows us to experience life as it truly is, without fear, without resistance. Consider how nature teaches us about impermanence. In the fall, the leaves turn color and fall to the ground. In winter, the trees stand bare. But no matter how cold or bleak things look, we know that spring will come again. The cycle of life continues. The seasons change, and so do we. Each day we wake up with a new opportunity to begin again. Each day is a new chance to learn, to grow, to change. In Buddhism, the practice of mindfulness helps us to become more aware of the impermanent nature of all things. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in each moment, without judgment or attachment. When we are mindful, we are able to witness the changes in our thoughts, emotions, and experiences without getting caught up in them. We learn to observe life as it is, instead of trying to control it. Imagine sitting quietly and watching your thoughts. You may notice that one moment you feel happy, and the next moment you feel sad. Thoughts of the past may come, or worries about the future may arise. But by practicing mindfulness, you can simply observe these thoughts without holding on to them. You let them rise, and then let them go. In this way, you begin to understand the impermanent nature of your mind. You begin to see that just like everything else in life, your thoughts and feelings are constantly changing. By accepting impermanence, we can begin to cultivate a deeper sense of peace and contentment. We stop resisting life's natural flow and instead learn to live in harmony with it. We become less attached to the idea that things should always stay the same. When we let go of this belief, we find a sense of freedom that allows us to enjoy life in its fullest expression. Embracing impermanence also helps us to be more compassionate. We understand that everyone is going through their own struggles and changes. People come into our lives, and people leave. Relationships change, and circumstances shift. When we accept this, we can love and support others without clinging to them or trying to control the outcome. We offer our love freely, knowing that all things, good and bad, are fleeting. So, how do we begin to embrace impermanence in our daily lives? Start by paying attention to the changes happening all around you. Notice the seasons, the weather, the people, and the experiences you have. Observe how everything shifts, grows, and eventually fades away. When you feel resistance to change, pause for a moment and breathe. Remind yourself that change is not something to fear, but something to embrace. Take a deep breath and feel the air moving through your body. Know that this breath is already passing, just like everything else. Every moment is fleeting, but that is what makes it precious. When we stop trying to hold on to things, we open ourselves to the beauty of the present moment. We begin to live with more grace and less stress. We stop worrying about what's next, and instead, we savor the now. Impermanence doesn't make life less valuable. In fact, it makes life even more meaningful. When we realize that all things are temporary, we stop taking life for granted. We begin to cherish each moment, knowing that it will never come again. This understanding gives us the courage to live authentically, to love deeply, and to pursue our dreams without fear. In the end, impermanence teaches us one simple but powerful truth. Everything changes, and so can we. Just as the seasons shift, we, too, can change. We can learn, grow, and evolve into better versions of ourselves. We don't need to fear the changes we face. Instead, we can embrace them as opportunities for growth and transformation. Life is a constant flow. Join in the dance and let it take you where it will.